In this series of videos, I want to address a common error that people make when thinking and writing and researching about media influence. And that is the tendency to think that media influence only comes from media industries. It's important to acknowledge that one of the reasons why media have become so influential in the social world is because media technologies and contents are things that people use to address their own social circumstance, to either become the sorts of people that they want to be, or to confront a social problem with the heightened visibility that contemporary social media in particular affords people. And this is really important because what we're talking about is how media become influential because they become a gateway through which people can exercise what we can call some form of agency. And agency, quite simply, is the capacity to feel in control of your own life, to say the things that you want to say, to determine who you want to be, and to change the world to better suit you, even if it's just your social world. So, another way of looking at this is to say that another way to think about media influence is less in terms of what media industries do to people and more in terms of what people do with media, either content or technologies. Now, this is an observation that's been made for many, many years by many scholars over many decades. And I suppose the problem with that is that it becomes something of a cliche. But as the songwriter Lloyd Cole once wrote, cliches become cliches because they're true. And if we are doing research that is considering how media construct the social world in complicated ways that involve many factors, one of those really important factors is the people who are using media. And so, what I'm going to do in this series of lectures is to give you an overview of how scholars have understood the role that media play in letting people take control of their social circumstances. I'm going to be talking about the history of where this idea emerges from. I'm going to be talking about the concept of resistance, the concept that broadly that media users sometimes use the media, again, either content technologies or both, to actually try and write a different version of the society in which they live, to really kind of overcome dominant ways of seeing the world, and in overcoming those dominant ways of seeing the world, change the way that they experience their lives. And I'm going to be talking about that in relation to some recent research by Velez on how women confront the the incredibly upsetting phenomenon of revenge porn. Now, before we get into this, I just want to reassure everybody that there will be no pornographic images in any of the videos that follow. We don't need to look at pornography to talk about it. But what I do want to suggest is that Velez's recent work on how women deal with revenge pornography is very much the latest incarnation of a long-running story in media and cultural studies that you need to know about. And this is how people who suffer beneath the burdens of particular kinds of social expectations and social norms that don't reflect their own interests use the media to change views, or at least to attempt to disrupt common sense about how the world works. And gender has been a particularly interesting place where that happens. So I'm going to be talking about resistance as it relates to agency and as it relates to gender practices. And then finally, I'm going to be ending with a methodological note to make comments on what the topic tells us about how we might and why we should want to integrate ethnographic insights into the research that we do, even if we don't end up doing conventional ethnographies. So that's the broad map of what I am going to cover in my presentations on the concept of media and agency.